Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to present my strategic plan for the staffing needs in the GI endoscopy at Intercommunity Hospital. The reason we're doing this plan is because we've had some instances of unavailability of trained GI staff for these procedures. We have 4 staff members, 1 charge nurse, 2 RNs, and 1 technician, covering 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This puts a huge burden for these 4 staff members to cover the call. The volume is inconsistent as well. We have some days where there's 0 procedures and some days where there's 6. The space that we have provided for these procedures, we have 1 cleaning room, which was recently updated to meet the regulatory compliance. We also have a recovery room with 5 bays, and it's not consistently used to its capacity. The procedure room we're using now is temporary. Once the angio suite construction begins, we will have to be moved, and that will be to a new temporary location, which will go back to radiology once the angio suite is completed. So therefore, we need new permanent space to provide GI. The strategic goal is to provide qualified staff, provide appropriate facilities for these procedures, and to reduce the costs related to providing GI services by not having to maintain a separate GI space any longer, and to have not having to find new space and build a GI space. The plan would be to move the GI procedures into the surgery department. We would combine staff, training the OR staff to assist with the GI procedures and the GI staff to assist with a wide variety of OR procedures. We would also train the SPD staff to perform the cleaning and processing of the GI scopes. All this ties together with our CVHP mission, which is providing safe, quality care for our patients through consistent, competent staffing and utilizing the appropriate staff in the various roles. The stakeholder analysis was done to identify the stakeholders and find out who may have influence on the project and who would be affected by the change. We also wanted to know who would be our resistors and who would be supportive of the project. We want to use those supporters to overcome the resistance and help plan out the project. The SWOT analysis was done to review the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the success of the project. We want to shore up those strengths. We also want to use leverage the strengths and opportunities to reduce the effect of the weaknesses and the threats. The main thing I wanted to point out on this slide was that we want to expand the skill and the knowledge of our OR, GI, and SPD staff. We also want to utilize the talent appropriately, using the SPD staff rather than RNs to clean and process the scopes. And then it also frees up space and eliminates the need to find and build new GI space. The strategic map was done to outline the influence of the various goals areas on each other. The learning goals feed into the business goals feed into the customer service goals, and customer service goals into the financial goals. The timeline for this project is starting with this presentation and gaining approval from the executive team. Phase 1 of the project would be communication. We would and developing a training plan by getting the input from the OR, GI, SPD staff, and the physicians. The communication would include ongoing feedback and updating to the stakeholders towards the progress. Phase 2 would be the OR training, which we're anticipating to be approximately 1 month. Phase 3 would be the GI training, which will be a year-long process, mainly for the RNs who must be trained on all the different aspects of the OR. The surgical tech would probably take approximately 3 months. Phase 4 is the complete integration. The GI procedures would be incorporated into the surgery lineup. The staffing schedules would incorporate both the GI needs and the OR needs. We may have to adjust this to evaluate the need for 2 crews on the weekends, since those seem to be our busier times. And we also need to adjust the timeline based on the progress and the metrics as the plan unfolds. The performance measures that we will be looking at will be to track the completion of training and competencies for each employee type. OR staff, we hope to reach 100% trained staff in a 1 month period. The GI staff will be a longer period, so it'll be 1 year for the RNs and 3 months for the one surgical tech. SPD staff, we're anticipating a 6-week process and to reach that 100% training. And then we will also be tracking the reduction of call shifts required for each person. We track the number of shifts after the OR staff are trained compared to the current average, with a goal of a 25% reduction and a 50% reduction as a stretch goal. So how do we know if this plan is successful, or how will we know? It's based on the key performance measures that we just mentioned. In the end, all OR staff will be trained and competent. All GI staff are trained and able to function independently with some guidance. All SPD staff are trained, and the physician satisfaction will be high, with minimum complaints regarding service and no episodes of staffing gaps. And the current burden of call will be reduced by 25%. And as we've mentioned before, the GI space that we're currently using will be reallocated to meet other organizational goals. In conclusion, the desired response from this presentation is to gain your approval for moving forward with the plan. We also need your approval for the allocation of resources and funding for the training and support of the physicians as they are going through this project change. Now I'd like to open it up to the group for any questions or suggestions for how we might modify this plan, and thank you for your attention.